For over 40 years, the Central Water and Sewage Authority has provided quality, affordable and efficient services to the citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Through technology and consistent upgrades, the CWSA has improved our water, solid waste management and sewage services. CWSA, providing quality and efficient service.
A very pleasant morning to our listening and viewing audiences. It is our distinct privilege here at the Central Water and Sewage Authority to address you today. There is no doubt that these are unprecedented times for St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and our response to such should be the same. Today, we see it fit to bring to the attention of our valued customers and friends some developments within the CWSA that we feel are crucial going forward. Our presentation will span 7 areas. 1, preparation for the Atlantic hurricane season. 2, a recap of the challenges faced by the CWSA in 2020. 3, our response to the historic drought. 4, preparation and response to the volcanic eruption. 5, a status report of the water supply system and the solid waste management in the aftermath of the eruption. 6, customer relief measures and the financial impact of COVID-19 and the volcanic eruption. To address us today, Chief Executive Officer Garth Saunders, Solid Waste Manager Winsworth Quao, and Senior Engineer Bernard Maloney. At this time, without further ado, I will hand you over to Garth Saunders.
Thank you, Joan, and good morning to all. Let me take this opportunity to welcome you, the media, and also the listening and viewing audience. As Joan indicated, I'm flanked by 2 young professionals at CWSA, and I feel also privileged to be in their presence because they are part of our team that continues to strive towards improving the management of the CWSA, even during these critical times. The purpose of this media conference is to update all of St. Vincent and the Grenadines on issues involving the CWSA and issues that impact them, issues that I think, that we all think are of great concern in the immediacy, in the medium and long term as well. There were some issues raised over the last year, especially in the aftermath of the historic drought, and then during the recent volcanic eruption. Some of these issues brought out legitimate concerns, and some may be misconceptions, and others may simply require some clarification, some elucidation. We hope that you, as a press corps, would raise some of these issues and offer us the opportunity to clarify these issues. We at CWSA believe in giving the media access to information that is grounded in both science and truth. And we expect that any analysis, you can expect any analysis that we give would also be rooted in integrity and authority. So we hope that coming out of this media conference, more people would be better informed and inspired to take meaningful action on the issues raised. Joan outlined, our Public Relations and Marketing Manager, outlined several areas of concern. There are 7, and I will try to address them one by one. And issues raised in my delivery can be challenged, and you can request clarification on any of those issues in the session after I make that delivery. So let's start with the first issue, which involves the immediate Atlantic hurricane season. Today is the 2nd of June, and the 2nd day of the Atlantic hurricane season. This year, we have a projection of an above average activity during the hurricane season. So we hope that all listeners are aware of this. And I just want to remind listeners as well that during a normal hurricane season, the expectation is that at some point we're going to get high winds and we're going to get heavy rainfall that will eventually cause flooding, land slippage, and blockages to rivers, including our intakes, and very often it can dislodge some of our pipelines. So it means that in every community in St. Vincent, we need the population to be alerted to the fact that you can lose your water supply system in the aftermath of a heavy rainfall event. We are not capable yet of knowing which system will be lost, so we require all citizens to be in a state of readiness, a state of preparedness in terms of your water supply. Obviously, you have to be prepared for other things as well. But today we are focusing on water supply primarily. So we ask that you try as far as possible to have storage from 2 to 4 days, storage capacity in your homes for 2 to 4 days. And this is so because we have to give the CWSA's staff time to do damage assessment, to plan a response, and to actually carry out reconstruction where and when necessary. So the 2 to 4 days is what we require, and we normally at CWSA, we normally give the advice that you should have planned for 15 gallons per person per day in your homes. So when you're designing your storage systems or when you're catching up water, try as far as possible to meet that target figure of 15 gallons per person per day. It can be more, but we understand that there may be challenges. I think this weekend, we're on Wednesday, the 2nd of June. This weekend, we anticipate some rainfall. I want to ask all listeners to continue to focus on the weather reports, and to plan for rainfall this weekend, and indeed throughout the rest of the hurricane season. Listen to your daily weather reports. Keep in touch with updates from NEMO and our Met Office, and also the CWSA's Facebook page, because we are always, trying to keep ahead of the weather in our planning and in order to plan our response. Activate your home water storage plans. Keep water stored in receptacles that can be kept secure and covered. And you can be assured that CWS, as usual, will do its best to minimize inconveniences during these periods. We will work, as we normally do, assiduously, to try to restore the system in the shortest possible time. That's what we do all the time. We will also engage in truck-borne water, delivery of the truck-borne water to areas that are out for significant lengths of time. So that's the preparations for the Atlantic hurricane season. The next area I wanted to focus on, to give some perspective, is to refocus our attention on the challenges that CWSA faced in 2020. Because a lot of those challenges came over into 2021 and indeed impacted what we have done in 2021 so far. There was a historic drought, those of you who remember. In 2020, we had the lowest rainfall figures recorded in over 70 years. And that resulted in a water supply deficit, a shortfall, where we were not able to provide 24/7 service for a period of about 5 to 6 weeks. So we had a shortfall, and the shortfall in delivery was not entirely due to a lack of storage. What it was really about was the lack of water sources and the abstraction capacity of the CWSA to take us out of that shortfall period. So we had that historic drought, and we were challenged. We also had, coming on the heels of that drought, during that drought, the advent of COVID-19. And there was a loss of jobs, there was a collapse of the tourism industry and other commercial ventures, and there was loss of income streams from tourism-related plant, coming out of the lack of airline airlift and air arrivals and cruise arrivals as well. The CWSA, in particular our solid waste management department, relies heavily on environmental revenue streams from the tourism industry and from airlift and cruise passengers. The collapse of those two industries impacted CWSA significantly, and later on we will see how it impacted our finances as well. A lot of you would ask the question, persons would ask the question, what then was your response to this historic drought? With the assistance of our Water Resource Department within the CWSA, which was established back in 2009, we used information collected on various water sources throughout the country to complete a design and to commence construction of a new water intake in the Vermont Valley in an area called Francois. That project is currently in progress, and it will supplement the Dalloway system, which is our main water supply system. So in terms of both storage and water abstraction, we are on the way to increasing our capacity and capability. We are also in the process of linking the Hermitage, that's the North Leeward water supply source, with the Layou water supply system, which lends itself to improve the flexibility for the Layou and South Leeward area, because the Hermitage water supply system, many of you may not know this, has an overcapacity. It's able to supply many areas, many more areas than it currently does. So by linking that water supply system with the Layou water supply system, it gives Layou an option for water supply when there's a fall off or when there's a problem on their system. So that's a second option, a second initiative that we have undertaken. We've also commenced working on a new storage tank at the area called Kelburnie on the Majorca system, and that will increase our storage capacity on that system as well. So in less than a year, we have embarked on 3 significant water supply projects aimed at alleviating the problems we faced last year by that historic drought. We've also had challenges so far in 2021, and everybody knows we came over with the challenge of COVID, and very early in the year, we were faced with an impending volcanic eruption. And at CWSA, we understood very early that that was going to have a significant challenge for us. A water supply challenge and also a solid waste challenge. Because what we do in solid waste, every day we are in the field collecting solid waste, garbage, for disposal, for safe disposal. So any activity that happens, anything that happens that can disrupt that, is of significant concern to us. We understand the problems. We understand the need to have garbage taken up because it can be a public health challenge. And we put plans in place at CWSA from early in the year where we met frequently, weekly, to prepare ourselves for a volcanic eruption. We planned approaches to our response. We planned approaches to our preparation, and we tried to ensure as far as possible that all areas of CWSA were in a state of readiness to ride out the eruption and to respond. Unfortunately for us, we did not have one single eruption as you have in a hurricane event. You have a hurricane, you plan, you ride out the hurricane, and then you respond. What we had with our, as many of you know, what we had in our volcanic eruption was a series of eruptions. So our response planning had to be set back several times. We had to recalibrate in several instances. And that affected the overall delivery, the overall response, and the overall recovery period. Nevertheless, we thought that we did a fairly good job in terms of preparation for this volcanic eruption. One of the areas that we know was going to be central to our response was the water supply and the quality of the water in the aftermath of the volcanic eruption. We therefore engaged in a lot of research, consultation, and we also met with the volcanologists who were on the ground, including Dr. Richard Robertson and Dr. Christopher from St. Kitts. And we had a very interesting session on one occasion, and I must commend them both, because what they told us was going to happen happened almost, to the last detail. And I recall that during that session, I listened to Richie, Dr. Robertson, and I felt that he's just preparing us for the worst. I was hoping that it would not, that would not materialize. That he was being a good professional, a good scientist, and preparing us for the worst. But unfortunately for us, the worst happened in terms of what he predicted. And we all know we could have suffered significantly more. So also, let me hasten to say, we are thankful that the outcome was not worse and there was no loss of life, etc. So we are happy that we were able to prepare for this. He also indicated to us, the volcanologist, that our major challenge would have been a water supply quality challenge, mainly from the physical water quality, the ash in the water, rather than any chemical problem. Nevertheless, we prepared ourselves to be able to assure the Vincentian public that the water that's being supplied, that's been abstracted and supplied to the public, was of an acceptable water quality. And we took all the necessary steps, including shutting the system down during the volcanic eruptions and arranging for testing to be done. And a little later on, we can ask our senior engineer to give us details and to give us, I'm sure you would want to know, the quality assurance of the water that we presently supply in the aftermath of the volcanic eruption. And that is, basically what we did. We also planned that once we know there were red, orange, yellow, and green zones, we also planned to not have activities in those orange and red zones. We limited our waste collection. We restricted that on the days immediately following the eruption. And we restarted in a phased way the solid waste collection, because it is, we need to understand it's very important that waste continued to be collected, because public health hazards can be easily created when waste accumulates in any point. So we have to, we found ourselves having to try our best to get waste to the landfill to be properly handled and disposed of. Persons are always going to ask, well, now that we are in the aftermath of the volcanic eruption, and we hope it stays that way in the aftermath, what are your options going forward for water supply? Our water supply options have always been on the table, but we have chosen not to exercise them because a lot of the options have significant financial implications, technical and financial implications, and persons will quickly run to desalination plants, groundwater options, and we have our senior engineer who can expound a bit on that as well if you wish. But those are always on the table. The implementation of them going forward we will have to necessarily focus a little more on them as we go forward, because as you would see a little later on in my presentation, we were severely affected by 3 water sources that are actually positioned on the volcano, on the La Soufrière volcano, the Oya, Sandy Bay, and Fancy water sources, and they were knocked out, but we'll get to that a little later on. So those were the challenges faced during 2020 and 2021. And I just wanted to remind the public, listening audience as well, that we, as I said, we prepared for this. And just to go back to what we did, we sensitized the public, following our consultations with the authorities. We sensitized the public on the effects, the possible effects on the CWSA's water supply. We advised the public on their private and domestic storage requirements, how to do so safely. We gave some recommended actions, and we talked about conserving water and prioritizing the water use following the eruptions. We talked about disconnecting downpipes from roofs, because we knew that ash was going to accumulate on roofs, and we did not want persons who used mainly rainwater harvesting to be affected. So we gave all of that information. We also had a caution to boil all water in the aftermath of the volcanic eruption, because a lot of persons, we recognize, not having CWSA's water available would be going to springs and maybe some streams, and we felt that it was necessary to have the general public, obviously in concert with the Public Health Department, boil all water, even water received from the CWSA, if it is not handled properly and it is left open to possible contamination, needed to be boiled afterwards. So water supplied by CWSA through the pipe is of good quality, but once that water comes out of the pipe and it goes into a receptacle that may or may not be contaminated, you could have problems. So we try to ensure that persons, even after having received CWSA's water, to boil all water. But we will assure you, and you would see a little later on, that the quality of the water supplied by CWSA meets all international drinking water standards. Our emergency response, as indicated, we wanted to shut the systems down, and we did that. We wanted to collect samples of the water in the aftermath for local testing and regional and international testing. That we did. We said we were going to work along with the Public Health Department. That we did as well. We also said that we were going to implement a system of daily water distribution using our trucks, and we did that, and we were also helped by members of the general public and the commercial sector. We want to give them thanks, for all of the assistance given to CWSA in that response, in distributing water. And at the end of at the end of my presentation, I'll just make more mention of that. But it's important that persons know that we were not in this alone. We were supported by the government, by the private sector, and we want to say thanks to them. We also indicated that we were going to have ongoing communications with NEMO and the public health officials, and this we did. So we were fairly accurate in terms of our expectations, and we were fairly successful in terms of our response to the volcanic eruption. Most importantly now, I just want to move to the area of our water supply system status, and to let you know that we have, on a permanent basis, 12 water supply systems that we rely on. In the aftermath of the volcanic eruption, we, however, were able to activate an additional water source, which is a groundwater source in the Penistone area, which served us very well while we worked towards getting the other systems back on track. Our water sources on the leeward side, those are the Hermitage and Layou sources and the Dalloway source. Those were not damaged in a physical way, but there were several blockages due to ashfall. And we had to engage in a lot of cleaning of our intakes and our structures to be able to safely restore that water supply. So the Hermitage, Layou, and Dalloway systems were affected, and we took up to 3 days to a week to have a phased restoration of those systems. The Mamoon system, which is in Mount St. Andrew, that system was also affected, only slightly, and we had that system restored. The Majorca system, again, also only very slightly, but all the systems we had to engage in water diversion and cleaning and water restoration because of the significant ashfall. And that was the prediction, indeed, from the volcanologist, Dr. Richard Robertson and company. The Montreal system, that was an open system with a set of springs and also some rivers. What we had to do was to protect the springs, as we also did in Layou, to cover some of the springs to ensure that what came out of the springs at the outcrop would be protected. The problem with, persons ask, well, why can't you cover the other systems? Why did you have to shut down? Well, simply, think about it. Where we abstract water from rivers, there are miles of river upstream of that abstraction point, which we cannot cover. So what we collect is what comes down from that area, so it's impossible to protect in the incidence of a volcanic eruption. The Perseverance system is in the orange zone. That system was severely affected. I didn't think that we were going to sustain such damage, but there were a lot of pyroclastic material that broke a lot of trees, damaged a lot of the vegetation, and affected the access road to the Perseverance plant. Also, the Perseverance system was blocked significantly with rocks and trees, and we had to, first of all, get over the challenge of motorable access, to get to the system, and that took us a week and a half, and then we engaged in system restoration. And that took us a while. System restoration meant cleaning the dam, physically moving rocks and mud from behind the dams, and because the access was limited, there was no means for us to get heavy equipment into that area. So that's why we took some time in restoring that system. A similar occurrence happened at our Jennings system, which is our second largest system, and that, as you know, supplies the entire windward coast from Byra all the way down to Diamond, a system that can also expand into Calicoa if required. So that would tell you of the extent of the water loss that we had to endure. And we were fortunate to be able to restore that in about a week and a half. We had that system back up and running. In the intervening period, naturally, we had challenges. We had persons, without water for extended periods, but we were able to supply water by trucks to those residents along the windward coast down to Diamond. The three systems, though, that we are presently looking at are the three systems in the red zone. And we have some maps which we will distribute to you, which would indicate quite clearly the location of these water supply systems, these water sources. They are situated on the volcano that had recently erupted. So what has happened, we've had a few reconnaissance visits to some of those intakes, and we still have to go to collect more details because a lot of those systems were destroyed, the intakes were damaged, pipelines were dislodged, and we necessarily would have to go to do our detailed damage assessment once access is provided and once the all clear is given, and to try to, as far as possible, restore those systems. I, however, have to say that on those three water supply systems, they are in valleys radiating from the crater of La Soufrière. Important to understand that. What that means is that any heavy rainfall that comes will again render those systems susceptible to significant damage. So whatever restoration we manage to do in the short term, the public needs to understand that at any point in time, if there's sufficient rainfall and heavy mud flows, we can incur damages again, and we will have to do some system restoration. So that's, as they say at CWS, as the young people say, that's what we do. We restore systems that are damaged. That's basically what we do, because that's the environment in which we live. Fancy may come a month later. However, the OWIA system is the biggest challenge because that sustained maximum damage. Almost 80% of the pipeline is gone, and the pipeline route is also, severely eroded. So what is now going to be required is a new route and maybe a new method of pipeline construction to have that system restored. That's in the short term. And as I mentioned, important to understand, whatever we do for those 3 systems that are on the volcano, I repeat, those systems are on the volcano. Once there's heavy rainfall, they are going to be susceptible to significant damage again. So we may have to, most likely, have shutdowns in those areas during the rest of the rainy season in 2021. What we'll be doing, obviously, we've started that already within our engineering department, is to plan for the future, plan for the medium to long term. While we can do some system restoration early next year, and it's important to understand that once you're working in a river, you can only really undertake serious or significant construction work in the dry season, because the method of construction has to be you divert water to one half of the river and you do construction in the other half. That's what happens. That's what you see when persons are doing roads. In order to continue to use the road or a runway or whatever, you use half of the runway, you reduce it, you do a construction, and then you move. Similarly, in a river, that's what we have to do. And that's most effective only in the dry season. So a permanent solution for those 3 water sources in the river can only be done next year in the dry season. So whatever we do, expect challenges. In the long term, we are going to have to, in CWSA, change the paradigm that we normally have, where we say we would not pump. We'll try not to have pumping done on any of our systems, where we will supply all water by gravity. That may not be the case any longer for those north windward areas that are on basically the water sources, and the villages are actually on the flanks of the volcano. So we have to understand that any new water supply system for that area may have to involve groundwater, and we have a groundwater source in Overland already, and we have also plans for maybe tapping into desalination in the OWIA area and to pump water up to elevated storage tanks to be able to gravity feed back to the residents. That's the long-term option, right? So we are thinking along those lines. We are not sitting. We are constantly in discussions and in designs and doing research. And most importantly, as I say again, the establishment of the Water Resource Unit within the CWSA in 2009 was a significant development, because it allowed us to always have data collection available so that we can plan better as engineers, as planners, and we can ensure that the government and the powers that be, CWSA, we are able to attract investment funds for these projects and be in a better position to take the country forward. So that's the response to the volcanic eruption, and that's the system status. As persons know, all systems have been restored with the exception of those 3 systems, those 3 water supply systems in Fancy, OWIA, and Sandy Bay. We have now water extended by pipeline to Orange Hill. There's a standpipe in Orange Hill, so all of Georgetown in that orange area, orange zone, and part of the red zone now, what is available in Sandy Bay. Sorry, not Sandy Bay, in Orange Hill, so that folks in Sandy Bay, residents in Sandy Bay who are venturing into that area to do cleaning, can access water, transport water from that Sandy Bay area to assist with cleaning, because we know cleaning can never be complete without water. I understand that Cwsa is using river water to help wash down the streets, and they will continue to do that once the all clear is given for any extended period, because one of the challenges we have, as you would guess, is that we have a red zone and we have restrictions. What we do not know, what is not clear, is how long we can stay in the red zone on any particular day, how much activity we can engage in. And that is always going to be a challenge. So we understand the challenges faced. Now that you understand the challenges faced by CWSA, it's important for you to understand that the CWSA understands and understood the challenge faced by the general public, you the consumers. And you would recall last year, 2020, we implemented a series of customer relief measures where we suspended disconnections for a period of 9 months of last year in the wake of the COVID pandemic and the loss of jobs for lots of persons and loss of income. We recognize that bill payment might have been a challenge, so we suspended disconnections for 9 months. We also had a moratorium on any payments, so although you didn't come in to pay, the CWSA did not go out to disconnect to try to recover funds. We didn't have to do that. Initially, the Prime Minister had asked, the Cabinet had asked for a 3-month period. We extended that for the entire year, up to December, 9 months, the CWSA. So we want to thank our board too, our board of directors who sanctioned such a relief measure. We also offered a special discount in December last year, where the CWSA gave discounts to persons who paid their bills up to a certain amount. So we not only had a moratorium, but when you came in to pay, we gave discounts. Recognizing that during the December Christmas period, persons would have been challenged, and we offered that relief. In 2021, we came over into 2021 with the volcanic eruption pending, and once that, and the COVID situation, we reintroduced the moratorium on payments and again suspended disconnections from early in the year, this year. And we again offered a special discount to consumers who zeroed their balances and who paid at least 50% of their balance. That started from mid-March and it will run until the end of June. That's presently in place. That's the relief we're going to give. And a little later on, I'll show you the financial impact of what we have extended to our customers. There were also some volcanic customer relief measures. And I want to thank our board of directors for directing us in this regard for severely affected customers. Those from on the leeward side, from Belle to Fitzhugh, to Richmond, and on the windward side, from Byra northwards to Fancy. Those were the severely affected customers. Those customers, as we know, were either evacuated or had their lives and services disrupted to a significant extent. For those persons, there will be no billing for either solid waste or water supply services for 3 months, for the 3-month period, April, May, and June of this year. Again, that's because of the loss of services, the need to clean up, and because we understand that disruptions have costs, financial implications. And we at CWSA recognize part of our mantra, our mission, is to have quality services and affordable services. We want our customers to understand that we understand the challenges that they face. We also understand that we are a utility, we are an essential service that has to be running all the time. We have to have water supplied every day. We have to have solid waste collection every day. We have to maintain the CWSA running at a certain minimum level. So we need revenue, but we also understand that the public can be challenged as well. And we want to thank the public generally for their forbearance in all of the inconveniences, all of which, as you would understand from what I've just said, were natural occurrences outside of the control of CWSA. So that's what we do. We prepare ourselves to respond. We have to have system resilience and we have to have financial resilience. And we will come to the financial impact now for the CWSA. In 2019, CWSA's overall revenue, annual revenue was $29.6 million. That's prior to the COVID. In 2020, our revenue, because of the impact of the lack of business, tourism, our revenue fell by $1.2 million to $28.4 million. And we are projecting that in 2021, we will be at that same level. Hopefully, later on this year, we hope we can recover some of what we lost, but that is left to be seen. We will, continue to prepare ourselves for any eventuality. Our surplus in 2019 was $1.7 million. We are going to report a surplus of 2020 of just over zero. So we just broke even in 2020 because of the loss of revenue and because of the increases in customer offerings and because of the increases in expenses. We had also a cleanup and restoration cost. We've had that so far for 2021 of over $100,000 so far in terms of immediate responses. That does not include hardware, pipeline replacement, etc. But that's what we've spent so far. We have a separate account for that. I mentioned a while ago the relief that we are going to offer to the red zone areas north of Belle Isle and north of Byra. That will see the CWSA losing $784,000 in revenue for that 3-month period. That's what we are going to lose in given that bill-free period. Quite naturally, it's not that we are giving all of it, because a lot of it came naturally. We were not able to supply. So it's not that we are actually giving, but that's the loss in revenue that we're going to project for that 3-month period. We also had, as I mentioned, 2 customer offerings, one in December of 2020, where we extended a total of $157,000 to the customers, to our water supply customers in St. Vincent the Grenadines, which they benefited from. And so far, for 2021, for the period March and April, we've already extended $102,000 in customer relief measures to our customers. So it's important to understand that we understand it's a two-way street. We understand that the challenges, we are all in this together, and we have to share the burdens. So we want the viewing audience, listening and viewing audience, to understand that the volcanic eruption challenge and the COVID challenge, every business in St. Vincent experiences that. We want to tell you that we are experiencing it, and we are trying to lend a hand. We are trying to get our businesses back up and running as quickly as possible. And you may notice that the 3 persons at the table today are not wearing masks, and I think I want to introduce at this point the reason why we are not doing that, because the CWSA family, we are fully vaccinated at the table, so we are not concerned too much about each other. When we go into another forum, we will, obviously wear our masks, but it shows the importance of the vaccination, and it shows the importance of trying to get back to normal as quickly as possible. The 3 persons here, we are part of a significant essential service, and we recognize that in order to function properly, we have to meet regularly. We have to engage other persons. So it's important that we get ourselves in a state where we are not able to infect anyone or be infected. At least that's the goal. So we want to encourage listeners and viewers, the viewing audience, to take up the challenge, have the vaccinations, and let's get back to normal, where we can speak to each other from not from behind a mask, and we can get our services, our businesses back up to running, so CWSA can again record a surplus. We can reinvest funds into system improvements, and we can, have CWSA back to normal as quickly as possible. Finally, I just wanted to express some gratitude to persons, St. Vincent, to everyone, but specifically, I want to start with the staff of CWSA and say that I'm proud and humbled sometimes to be leading such a team. I met earlier this week with some staff from the North Windward area, and that's in the red zone. And some persons expressed concerns, but that staff, they are ready to go. We have to hold them back, but they are ready to go to try to work on system restoration. But we have to be careful. We cannot be injudicious. We cannot be careless. We have to be guided by the science, and we want to do system restoration as quickly as possible. But we have a culture within CWSA where our staff have a certain sense of pride in delivering services, and we, on behalf of the board and the management, we want to thank all of the staff for their contributions in the aftermath, especially of the volcanic eruption. The days following the eruptions, persons will not know. The inundation we had with phone calls and requests and complaints, the days following and the weeks following, as we tried to get our system back up. And there was, a number of staff who came out to assist. As I always indicate to our staff, the bowlers have to bat and the batsmen have to bowl at some point. So we had, persons who would normally be in the office come out to assist in water distribution, in water testing, everything. And it was a pleasure, as usual, to see our staff, come together. So I want to thank them again on behalf of the government and people of St. Vincent. And of course on my own behalf, because, I can only say that the success of CWSA has more to do with the staff than anybody else, including management. We want to thank the public, the customers who we know were inconvenienced for a lot of time, and we know that they had to endure quite a bit and they required quite some forbearance, and we want to thank them for that. Just to remind them that what happened was a natural occurrence. And all we could have done was try to respond, and that's what we did. We want to thank the government of St. Vincent and the Grenadines, the cabinet for meeting regularly, putting plans in place, and keeping the nation informed. NEMO as well, using NEMO, and BRACSA, of course. BRACSA, an important entity in terms of clearing access, getting persons, to be able to move in the shortest possible time. We know that they have significant challenges still, and we are dependent on them to clear some road access for us to get into the red zones. So we want to thank them and let them know that we understand the challenges, and we will be working along with them. The media, you guys who are here this morning, and the listening and viewing audience, the telecommunications companies and the utilities, all of this would not be possible if VINLEC had a system that was down, if Flow and Digicel and so on were down. We use those facilities to be efficient in our response. So we have to recognize them. Regional and international donors as well. They have given quite a lot and they have pledged quite a lot. We want to thank them for what they have given and what is to come. And especially the government of Trinidad and Tobago and the government of Venezuela. Because in the aftermath of the volcanic eruption was when you were most susceptible and you were most in shock. And to see the Trinidad government responding so quickly and the Venezuelan government gave us a lift, So we were happy that we were able to have our neighbors respond and support us in that way. We also had support from regional water authorities in terms of sending water and giving advice, regional governments, as you know, and PAHO, international bodies, and UNICEF. Those are the bodies that we collaborated with in the aftermath of the volcanic eruption. So, that's basically where we are. And I just want to say that it continues to be a challenge. I want to remind folks again that we are heading into the hurricane season. So I will end where I started, the Atlantic hurricane season. We are going to be in for a series of rainfall events between now and November, December. Let's plan for it. Let's understand that St. Vincent is a country that is susceptible to hazards, and that's where we live. That's what we do. We have to prepare ourselves to respond. So at this point, I will rest and ask that either there be I'll entertain questions, or I can probably at this point ask Winsbot, who's our solid waste manager, just to give us a brief rundown of the challenges faced by the solid waste unit in the aftermath, and then from that we can go to the water resource engineer, our senior engineer, Bernard Maloney.
All right.
Winsbot?
Yeah. Good morning to members of the media and to all who are listening live. As Mr. Saunders said, I'm the solid waste manager, and I just want to say publicly, I just want to thank him for fielding a lot of the public complaints during the aftermath of the eruptions. As you know, the public demanded so much information. You know, folks were wondering what was happening, and on a regular basis, on a daily basis, he was on the radio updating the public and dealing with their concerns, which I think allowed us as department managers, and I'm sure me as a solid waste manager, the opportunity to get the work done on the ground. Because, you know, as you're trying to get the work done on the ground, it's a challenge sometimes to deal with the public at the same time. And I think he did a very good job of handling those concerns, which allowed us to do our work on the ground. I just want to say, following the eruptions of April 9th, we quite naturally suspended the waste collection service in those areas that were evacuated. And those areas were effectively on the North Leeward side from Rosebank to Richmond, and on the North Windward side from Georgetown to Fancy. Now, but even on the North Leeward side from Belial northwards, there were some concerns about the road conditions. Even though they were not officially evacuated, that week following the eruptions, there were some ash deposits on the road, some significant ash deposits on the road that posed a challenge for the trucks to get into some of those areas. So Spring Village, Coase Hill, Rose Hall, Trumaka, there was some suspension in their service, at least for the first 2 weeks because of road conditions. We reevaluated that on April 21st. I myself and a team, we traveled down to Richmond, actually, to assess the road conditions. And we determined at that point that we could safely go up to Rosebank. And so we started to resume service in those areas. So they would have had some disruption for about 2 weeks, which was 2 collection days, as we do a once per week collection service. But by the 21st, the week following the 21st, they were able to get back their regular service. We've also responded to the issuance of the all clear for some people to return to some of those areas with our collection service. So currently, folks were given the all clear to go back to Georgetown on the windward side, and back up to Pettibodell on the leeward side. So garbage collection service, according to the regular schedule, has been resumed up to those areas. All of the other areas had a regular garbage collection. They were not affected in terms of the collection schedule. So we were really grateful for that we were able to continue the garbage collection service in some of the orange, yellow, and green zones. Our private contractors were responsive to the challenge as well. They were up to the challenge. Because what happened is that on the North Leeward and the North Windward areas, those areas that were evacuated, they were done by our private contractors. So they were able to reorganize their collection schedule to service some of those areas in the green zones, because they were not able to go, for example, up to Sandy Bay and Fancy and those areas northward. But they were able to do service the areas that are in the green zones, because those populations move down southwards. So in a sense, we still had the same amount of garbage to collect island-wide. It's just that they were now in different areas. The other challenge that we faced was servicing the shelters. 89 shelters were opened initially, public shelters housing just over 4,000 people, mostly schools, churches, community centers, etc. So we had to provide regular garbage collection service for those shelters, and the number of persons sheltered varied widely from about 150 all the way down to 3 persons. So we did an assessment of the shelters, and we established a communication channel with the shelter managers so that we can put an adequate waste collection service in place for those shelters. And just to note that we collect for the larger shelters garbage on a daily basis, Monday to Saturday, and for some of the smaller shelters, the collection service is at least once every 2 days, based on their requirement. But if anything changes, if there's a special need, the shelter managers contact us and we're able to respond. We also provided garbage collection support for some of those relief facilities that were set up. For example, the World Food Program that has an operation at Annisvale, and the World Central Kitchen. And as you guys know, there were some officers that came into St. Vincent to help with relief efforts, and they were housed at different places, and we were called upon to help with waste collection in those areas, and we were able to respond. One of the things that we had to do, we had to increase our garbage storage capacity by building some additional skips, that are those large metal containers, to be able to service some of those facilities. So we actually incurred some additional costs in doing that, but we were able to meet the demand. The next major area I think folks may have some questions about was dealing with plastic bottle management. We have a huge influx of plastic bottles in the country because of the water that came in, the bottled water. And there have been some questions about what we're doing with those plastic bottles. There's a company set up in St. Vincent called All Islands Recycling. They have been operating since 2013, and they have been buying back bottles since then. So those bottles are now being channeled into that stream for recycling. They indicated that they're able to shred up to 500,000, about 500,000 bottles per week. And they're offering a rate to the public of $2.75 per kilogram, which works out to about $1.25 per pound for plastic bottles. And a number of persons have already been taking advantage of that opportunity. But even prior to the volcanic eruptions, there were already about 350 persons in St. Vincent that were selling bottles to them. But they're saying that the numbers have expanded until, I think this morning, it was reporting some 500 persons are taking advantage of that opportunity. At the emergency shelters, there were plans put in place to separate plastic bottles. A number of shelters have facilities for storing plastic bottles. So whenever those bottles get to a certain volume that would make it feasible for a truck to take them to the facility, that will be arranged and organized as well. But this program, especially in a time when there's some economic strain, has provided some relief somewhat to some persons who are affected by COVID and even by the volcanic eruptions. A truckload of plastic bottles, some 50 bottles can yield up to $1,000 in revenue. And so some folks have been taking advantage of that. So in a nutshell, I think that's how we responded to the volcanic eruptions, and we continue to monitor the shelters, as we said, because folks may be there for a prolonged period of time and respond to their specific needs. And we'll continue to also support initiatives aimed at capturing some of the waste that has been coming in, specialized waste, especially plastics, because of the eruptions. But that would be what I would report for now.
Thanks, Winsworth. And I just wanted to also know, at this point, have our senior engineer, Bernard Maloney, respond to some queries in the public sphere in terms of the quality of our water supply in the aftermath of the volcanic eruption. Quality and quantity. So, Bernard, if you can give us, on where we are and what we have done so far.
All right. Good morning to the media and to the listening audience. I would like to join Mr. Cwsa in thanking our General Manager, Mr. Saunders, for his very strong leadership during this very difficult time. I think that determines whether a situation goes from an emergency to a disaster. And he worked assiduously, very long hours. I remember one occasion we were on the wharf very late, and he brought other skills out. He's bilingual, so we were negotiating with the Venezuelan for bulk water delivery. And he has done a very good job. On behalf of the staff, I'd like to thank him for that. Leading up to the volcanic eruptions, as Mr. Saunders said, we did quite a lot of research. We would have sent water samples as far as the United States for comprehensive screening. We screened up to 117 parameters, including metals, organic, inorganic constituents, and also our disinfection process. So we did quite a lot of that to establish certain baseline parameters. Going into the eruption, in the immediate aftermath, we partnered with the Soils Lab at the Ministry of Agriculture. Ash is very similar to soils and rocks. So we partnered with them along with our water quality expertise. We worked together and we did some initial screening using different physical parameters, and we did our testing here before we could reinstate our systems. We ensured that all of our tests met and far surpassed the standards of the World Health Organization and also the United States Environmental Protection Agency. After this, we worked with the Caribbean Water and Wastewater Association. We sent our samples over to Trinidad, where the Ecotox laboratories did other screening, and those results confirmed what we already knew. The water quality was almost unaffected. The main issue with the water, as Mr. Saunders highlighted, would have been the physical attributes that would have changed, for instance, the turbidity and so on. However, we would have allowed enough time for the water to settle by plain sedimentation. The ash doesn't remain in suspension for too long. So whenever we treat our water, it is of the highest standard and the highest quality. PAHO would have highlighted, based on research in New Zealand and other countries, that there would have been the possibility of arsenic poisoning. They provided us with rapid testing arsenic kits. We did a host of tests, and we never detected any trace of arsenic in our water. Other heavy metal testing showed that the water is of substantially good quality. We also partnered with PAHO and had our samples sent to the Public Health Department over in Martinique, and they then forwarded the samples to France, to a very highly accredited laboratory in France. And again, they confirmed, they scanned for quite a few parameters, over 31 parameters, and again they confirmed that our water is of the highest standard, and that's what we pride ourselves here at the CWSA. Whenever you turn on your tap, your water is of the highest international standards, and we can attest to that. We have the proof of that. All right?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, okay. So, having been given that quality assurance from our engineers, I think that we can now open the floor for any further clarification, because I think we've given you quite a bit of information, and if there's any clarification, Joan, you can lead the way.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes. Good morning. Dale De Silva with the Central newspaper. I think I'll start with Mr. Maloney.
Yes.
Just, if you could just, you don't have to go into great detail, if you could just perhaps identify what some of those, what are the water is tested for, what types of,
Okay. Well, as I mentioned before, in terms of metals, we will test for aluminum, arsenic, barium, cadmium, calcium, and the more threatening ones would be, for instance, lead and mercury, which are of known poisons. And again, and for instance, zinc, so literally from A to Z in terms of the metal testing. We do inorganic and physical factors. They include nitrate, nitrite, which perhaps can be from agrochemicals, and again, no trace. The disinfection byproducts, essentially the main groupings are haloacetic acids and trihalomethanes. So apart from these, the organic chemicals, the pesticides, herbicides, things like atrazine, 2,4-D, and other stuff that we use here in our industry. So as I said, we did a very comprehensive screening, 117 parameters, and we met and surpassed by far, these international standards.
Yeah, and if I may add to there, we also had some confirmation of the local testing that we use, the equipment that we use. PAHO and UNICEF were able to do simultaneous testing using different pieces of equipment, and we found that the results that we got were the same using different pieces of equipment, including the ones used by the Public Health Department and CWSA. So the international bodies were able to confirm that what we are doing is of the highest standard as well. On the ground, they were here on the ground.
I just have one other question. This one is to you, Mr. Saunders.
Yeah.
When you began your presentation, you basically addressed the potential danger that awaits us as we approach or as we enter the hurricane season.
Yes.
I remember in the immediate aftermath of the eruption, the volcanologists were speaking of the potential threat of lahars on the system.
Yeah.
We know that we had some heavy rains in late April. There's a lot of material dumped. Does this, or is this WSA aware, or have you guys gotten any word from other officials, other entities, what the potential threat looks like as of now, with more ash and trees and that kind of thing?
Yeah, but I think that it's clear to us at CWSA that there's a lot of ash deposits sitting on the volcano, sitting in the forest. And there are some damaged trees, there are dead trees that are just waiting to come down. And, we hope that it can come down in a measured way, a slow way, but it's unlikely. So we know that lahars are going to happen, and we heard from the volcanologists yesterday and today reminding us that is an extreme likelihood. It's going to happen. So what we are going to have to do at CWSA, again, as I mentioned, going into this rainy season, have the public sensitized. You're going to lose your water supply, either prior to the heavy rains or after the heavy rains. Because sometimes if we anticipate significant blockages from those lahars, we are going to have to shut our systems down, because we can't take that soup-like high turbidity mud into our systems, because they would block it and then cause another delay in restoration. So what we have to do is to protect our systems. So we shut down the intakes and shut down the outlets for a period of time. So that's what we'll have to do in the interim, in the intervening period between now and the end of the year.
Jim, just to interject here, I want to stress again the importance of having adequate storage at your house, at your business. This cannot be stressed enough. Over the years, we have been facing the droughts, we have been facing the high storm conditions, heavy rain, and so on, and it has affected our systems, and it's not going to change. It would more than likely, because of climate change, become worse. And this is an opportunity we want to say to folks to ensure that you have containers in your homes so that you can have water for an extended period of time. The amount of phone calls that we had following the eruption indicated to us that this message is not yet received. So we are advising you to do so, to have adequate storage in your homes. Any other questions? somebody indicated online, GM, that they are wondering about those who would be involved in the cleanup efforts, if there is some relief when they use their water supply.
Well, the persons who are involved in the cleanup efforts now in some of the orange zone and all of the red zone will not be billed for, they will not be billed for April, May, and June. So we anticipate that the cleanup efforts would take the rest of this month. So those bills would not be forthcoming. We would actually take your billing back to the 31st of March. So any water consumed may be measured, but it would not be billed. Right?
Okay.
So that's the important thing to you to understand.
Yes? Any other concerns?
Long enough, that's okay. Yes. That's it.
Well, if there is no other query or concern, we just want to thank the media for being here with us this morning as we try to get our information out to the public. The CWSA, we like to be proactive, and so we also like to ensure that our narrative is correct. So when the general public is commenting, they comment from a place of knowledge of facts, and which is why this press conference is happening this morning and why it is so important. As we know, it's being streamed live on Facebook, and of course later on the media would get the information out to the general public. We would like to say at this time also that we appreciate the relationship that we have with our customers, where they would call us and indicate where there are leaks in our community, in the communities, and we want to encourage you to continue to do so as we move into the hurricane season. And we hope that this press conference this morning would have cleared up some of the concerns that you would have had, and we wish you all the very, very best. Remember, you can contact us at the CWSA, and please continue to support our Facebook page so that you can have information as it come to hand. Thank you very much.
For over 40 years, the Central Water and Sewage Authority has provided quality, affordable, and efficient services to the citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Through technology and consistent upgrades, the CWSA has improved our water, solid waste management, and sewage services. CWSA, providing quality and efficient service.